Digestion is the process of taking in nutrients and then turning those nutrients either into energy or into building blocks that can be used by our body, for example, to grow and develop and maybe even reproduce. So when we talk about digestion, we have two different types of digestion. Most animals do. We have what is called intracellular digestion. So if I look at this word, intra means inside the cell. So this is inside the cell. You might remember from a previous biology class that you have inside of your cells, you have an organelle that has digestive enzymes. So you have like lysosomes that are able to release enzymes and break down the food inside of our cells. That's pretty crazy, but it happens, right? So we have an example would be lysosomes, which are inside of your cells. Lyse means to break apart. So those have digestive enzymes in them. Super important. We also have extracellular digestion. So this is where we have a digestive cavity. Maybe it's called, in the very first organisms, it's called a gastrovascular tract. So a gastrovascular or cavity, say. And this allows for enzymes to be released outside of the cell. You can think back about the most simplest animals that we have looked at, the sponges. The sponges do not have a gastrovascular cavity, so they only have intracellular digestion. Cnidarians like sea anemones and jellyfish have extracellular digestion and intracellular digestion. So they have one opening, a mouth and / anus, where food comes in, they break it down into little pieces, and then they are able to take those small, tiny pieces of food into the inside of their cells where they are digested even more. And so what extracellular digestion allowed animals to do is that allows them to eat larger food. So it allows animals to eat larger pieces of food. Sponges are filtering microscopic pieces of food that could fit inside of a cell. They cannot just digest anything that is too big. If it doesn't fit inside the cell, they can't digest it. So jellyfish, for example, can digest big fish, right? And so can sea anemones. And so that is a major adaptation, is having that gastrovascular cavity. Now, another thing about digestion is we have two types. So we can talk about chemical digestion. This involves enzymes. So for example, we have enzymes in our saliva that break down starch. So an example would be starch being broken down into smaller carbohydrates. Maltose is 2 glucose, starch is a lot of glucose. And this is done by a chemical called the salivary amylase. Now, I want you to note that ACE ending because that is super important. That means that it is an enzyme. Not all enzymes have ACE. So for example, we'll talk about the stomach, which it releases an enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme, but it doesn't have that ACE. But if you see that ACE, that means that it is specifically an enzyme. So salivary amylase You might see amylose, that's a sugar, but amylase is the enzyme, okay? So that is an important enzyme. If you put it in a piece of bread and if you hold it in your mouth without chewing, it will start to taste sweeter because you're able to break down that starch to produce a sugar that you can actually detect as a carbohydrate. Okay, so this is different than mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion is the physical breakdown of food, like by chewing, or like breaking it physically into smaller pieces without using an enzyme. So this is the physical breakdown of food. So some organisms have a gizzard, and some birds, for example, even eat stones, rocks, and they chew their food, they break it down inside their gizzard by using those rocks. We have teeth that are specialized for chewing and breaking down and digesting the food mechanically. And then even in our stomach, the churning of the stomach is an example of mechanical digestion. So we have different mechanisms that allow for breaking the food down. What this does is this increases the surface area over which enzymes can attach, can bind, right? So enzymes have to bind to their substrate to break them down. If there's lots of surface area, the enzymes can bind more readily. And so this speeds up digestion and makes it more efficient. If you don't chew your food well, you're not going to be able to digest it all, and it might even come out, of your body not digested at all, right? So thinking about chewing and mechanical digestion and how important that is.